Presenting our podcast, Got Milk, the Indian Dairy Context, brought to you by Shunya Agritech, India's first animal nutrition and well-being focused organization. Say hello to your hosts, Gear and Sahil.
Have you ever found yourself needing to get up to speed on something complex, like really quickly? Maybe it's a new thing at work, or I don't know, maybe it's trying to figure out how to properly feed a dairy cow for, peak performance. It can feel like a lot, right?
Oh, absolutely. Information overload is real.
Well, that's exactly what we try to do here with the deep dive, give you that essential shortcut, help you get informed fast. So today we're diving deep into the world of livestock nutrition. It sounds specific, maybe, but it's essential stuff. We're going to unpack how different feed components really impact dairy cattle health and, crucially, their milk production.
Yeah, and it's often misunderstood, even by people pretty close to farming.
Right. So our mission really is to cut through the noise. We want to demystify concepts like dry matter, talk about the real challenges with cheap feeds like rice straw, and then look at some pretty cool innovations like hydroponic fodder that can genuinely revolutionize things, get you the key insights.
And we've pulled together quite a range of sources for this. Everything from, serious academic papers and university extension guides to more practical hands-on stuff about feed components. We want to cover the fundamentals, but also see how these new approaches are actually playing out.
Okay, great. Let's start with a basic but super important one. Dry matter. Sounds simple enough, maybe, but what exactly is it and why should we care so much about it in animal feed?
Right. So think of dry matter, or DM, as the real substance of the feed. It's everything that's left once you take all the water out. Imagine you grab a handful of fresh pasture grass.
Okay.
It might feel heavy, but a huge percentage of that weight is just water. The dry matter is the concentrated part. That's where you find all the good stuff.
Yeah.
The carbohydrates, proteins, fats, minerals, vitamins, the fiber, everything the animal actually uses.
So it's not just dry, like it's been sitting out, but literally zero moisture. How do you, figure that out practically? And what's the big deal about knowing that number?
Exactly, zero moisture. In a lab setting, it's pretty straightforward. You take a feed sample, weigh it, then you put it in a special oven and dry it until its weight absolutely stops changing.
Yeah.
What's left, that's your dry matter percentage.
Okay.
And the reason it's such a big deal is it gets rid of the dilution effect. Different feeds have wildly different water contents, right? Fresh grass might be 80% water, while hay is maybe 10-15%. By looking at nutrients on a dry matter basis, you can compare apples to apples. You can see the true nutrient density of that wet grass versus the dry hay, or versus a grain concentrate. It levels the playing field for comparison.
Ah, that makes total sense. So you don't accidentally think something's super nutritious just because it weighs a lot from water. Okay. But you mentioned fiber is in the dry matter. People might think dry stuff is fiber. Are they the same?
No, and that's a really common point of confusion. Definitely not the same. Fiber is just one part of the dry matter. Dry matter is the total non-water stuff. Fiber refers specifically to the structural parts of the plant, the cell walls. Think cellulose, hemicellulose, and lignin, the tougher, often less digestible bits.
Gotcha. So fiber is a subset of dry matter. How do we measure those different fiber types? And what do those measurements tell us?
Right. We use specific lab tests. You'll often hear terms like NDF and ADF. NDF stands for neutral detergent fiber. It basically measures the total plant cell wall cellulose, hemicellulose, and lignin. It gives you a good idea of the feed's bulkiness.
Okay, bulkiness.
Yeah, and that's really important because it helps predict how much an animal can physically eat rumen fill, basically, and it's key for rumen health. Then there's ADF, acid detergent fiber. This measures the least digestible parts of that cell wall, mainly cellulose and lignin.
So the really tough bits. Exactly. A higher ADF generally means the feed is less digestible and provides less energy. Think of NDF as the whole scaffolding of the plant cell, and ADF as the really tough, hard-to-break down parts of that scaffolding. Measuring both helps nutritionists formulate diets that have enough bulk for healthy digestion, but also enough available energy.
Okay, NDF for bulk and intake, ADF for digestibility and energy.
Yeah.
That clarifies it perfectly. So it's not just about the amount of dry matter, but what kind of dry matter it is.
Got it.
Got it. Now let's shift to a common challenge. Using low-quality dry fodder. Rice straw is a big one globally. What does its dry matter profile look like?
Well, here's the interesting thing. If rice straw, or wheat straw for that matter, is baled properly, like below 12% moisture, its actual dry matter percentage is very high, often 88%, maybe even up to 92%. So purely in terms of being not wet, it's very dry.
Okay, 90% dry matter sounds pretty good on the surface, but I suspect there's a catch, given what you just said about fiber types. Suspect right. Here's the catch, and it's a big one for animal nutrition. The vast majority of that dry matter in rice straw is structural fiber, basically lignocellulose. It's tough stuff.
How tough are we talking?
Well, typically the NDF, that total fiber measure, makes up over 70% of the dry matter in rice straw. 70%. And then the ADF, the less digestible fraction, that can be anywhere from, say, 41% up to 56% of the dry matter.
Wow.
And within that ADF, you've got a significant chunk of lignin, maybe around 16% of the DM, which is almost completely indigestible by rumen microbes.
So let me get this straight. Something like 70 to 80% of what a cow eats as dry matter from rice straw is either totally indigestible or breaks down really, really slowly. And almost half of that is the really tough ADF stuff.
That's pretty much the picture, yes. It fills the rumen, provides bulk, but the actual nutrient release, the energy and protein payoff, is very low. And speaking of protein, the crude protein content in rice straw is incredibly low, too. We're talking maybe 2% to 7% on a dry matter basis.
Okay, so high fiber, low digestibility, hardly any protein. What does that mean for using it in a dairy ration?
It means that rice straw, on its own, is what nutritionists call a poor quality roughage. It simply cannot meet the nutritional demands of a productive dairy cow. It absolutely requires significant supplementation, maybe adding protein sources like urea or energy like molasses or some kind of treatment to improve its digestibility if you want the cows to actually thrive and produce milk effectively.
Right, so let's dig into that. When a cow is mainly getting feed like this, like poor quality rice straw, what are the actual observable consequences? What does a farmer see happening to their animals?
Well, probably the first thing they'd notice is reduced feed intake. That huge amount of indigestible fiber, that high NDF, physically fills up the rumen quite quickly.
The rumen fill effect you mentioned.
Exactly. It triggers satiety signals, tells the cow it's full, long before it's actually consumed enough energy or protein to meet its daily needs. It's like us trying to live on just celery sticks. You'd feel full, but you wouldn't be getting nearly enough calories and nutrients.
So they eat, maybe even look full, but they're effectively starving from a nutrient perspective. What does that lead to?
It leads directly to an energy deficit, and often a protein deficit too. And this kicks off a cascade of negative effects. You'll see weight loss, or for growing animals, very poor growth rates. Their overall body condition score will drop.
And for dairy cows, I imagine milk production takes a big hit.
A huge hit. Lower energy and protein intake directly translates to significantly decreased milk yield. And it's not just the quality can change too. You might see lower milk protein percentages, sometimes changes in milk fat composition as well. The cow just doesn't have the building blocks or the fuel to produce milk efficiently.
Okay, so poor performance is clear, but does this kind of diet actually harm their health too, beyond just lower production?
Oh, absolutely. The nutritional stress opens the door to a whole range of health problems. That chronic negative energy balance, where the cow isn't taking in enough energy, forces her body to mobilize its own fat reserves.
Okay, using its savings account, basically.
Right. But doing that excessively, especially around calving time, puts tremendous strain on the liver. It can lead to serious metabolic diseases like hepatic lipidosis or fatty liver disease and ketosis. These conditions can make cows very sick, reduce appetite further, and severely impact future productivity.
Wow. And what about the low protein? You mentioned that was really low in rice straw?
Yeah, that protein deficiency is another major issue. Protein is critical for immune function. When protein intake, especially rumen-degradable protein, is too low, the cow can't produce enough antibodies or maintain strong immune cells.
So they get sick more easily.
Exactly. They become much more susceptible to common infections, things like mastitis, which is utter inflammation, pneumonia, and they might struggle with wound healing or recovery from calving. Their overall resilience just plummets.
And inside the rumen itself, does all that tough, indigestible fiber cause physical problems?
It certainly can. In severe cases, that massive indigestible material, particularly the highly lignified fraction, can physically obstruct the passage of digesta through the rumen and the rest of the gut. This is called rumen impaction.
Like a blockage.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
It can reduce rumen motility, cause the cow to stop eating altogether, and can lead to secondary problems like bloat or even displacement of the abomasum, the true stomach. Plus, the lack of readily fermentable substrate can upset the balance of the rumen microbiome, leading to dysbiosis.
Okay, metabolic issues, weaker immunity, gut problems. What about minerals? Are those affected?
Yes, definitely. Mineral imbalances are another risk. Rice straw in particular can be quite high in silica, sometimes up to 14%, and also contains oxalates. Both of these compounds can bind calcium in the digestive tract.
Bind calcium, so the cow can't absorb it.
That's right. Even if there's calcium in the diet, the silica and oxalates can make it unavailable. This significantly increases the risk of hypocalcemia, or milk fever, especially around calving when calcium demand shoots up. Milk fever is a serious emergency. This can also contribute to problems like retained placenta.
Goodness. So this poor diet basically hits them from all angles. And I guess all of this must impact their ability to reproduce too. That's got to be a major concern for farmers.
It's a huge factor. Reproductive dysfunction is almost inevitable with chronic energy and protein deficiency. Cows need adequate nutrition to cycle properly, ovulate, conceive, and maintain a pregnancy.
So what happens?
They might take much longer to start cycling again after calving, have weaker signs of heat, lower conception rates when they're bred, and a higher risk of early embryonic loss. Studies have clearly linked diets low in protein, like below 10% CP, and high in indigestible fiber, like NDF, over 60%, to longer calving intervals and poorer fertility. It really drives home the point. You simply cannot sustain a healthy, productive dairy herd on poor quality roughage like rice straw alone. It needs serious balancing.
Okay, it's crystal clear that just relying on something like rice straw is not sustainable. It leads to a whole host of problems. So let's pivot. What does a good, balanced diet for a dairy cow look like? What are the key building blocks farmers need to combine?
Right, building that balanced ration is key. It's all about combining different feedstuffs to cover all the bases: energy, protein, fiber, minerals, vitamins. A cornerstone is often green forages, things like Napier grass, maize-harvested green, alfalfa.
The fresh stuff.
Yeah, the fresh stuff, it's usually quite palatable, promotes good rumen function with its natural fiber structure. It provides moderate protein, moderate energy.
Right.
The main limitations are often seasonality. It's not always available year-round, and for very high-producing cows, the energy density might not be quite high enough on its own.
Okay. What about conserved forages like silages? I hear a lot about maize silage.
Yes, silages are super important, especially maize or sorghum silage. They're basically fermented forages. The big advantage is they provide a stable, consistent feed source year-round, preserved through fermentation.
So less weather dependent day to day.
Exactly. They generally have good energy content, maybe a bit lower in protein than fresh legumes, but cows tend to eat more silage compared to dry hay because it's more palatable and digestible. The main things to consider are you need proper storage silos or bunkers and careful management during ensiling to avoid spoilage or poor fermentation.
Makes sense. Then you have the more concentrated feeds, right? Grains and protein meals.
Precisely. These are the energy and protein powerhouses. Cereal grains like maize, barley, wheat, they're packed with starch, which provides readily fermentable energy, really driving milk volume. The watch out here is feeding too much without enough effective fiber can lead to rumen acidosis, so balance is key.
Gotcha. And the protein sources.
Those are typically oilseed meals, soybean meal, cottonseed meal, rapeseed, or mustard meal. These are rich in high-quality protein, essential for milk protein synthesis, and they also contribute significant energy. They're often among the more expensive ingredients in a ration, though.
Right. And I know farmers often use byproducts from other industries, too, to manage costs.
Absolutely. Agro-industrial byproducts can be very valuable. Things like DDGS distillers dried grains with solubles, a byproduct of ethanol production, provide good protein and energy. Brands from milling rice or wheat offer fiber, some protein, and fat. Things like citrus pulp or bee pulp can also be useful.
Benefits being cost effectiveness.
Often, yes, they can be cost-effective sources of nutrients. The main challenges can be variability in quality depending on the source and processing, and sometimes potential risks like mycotoxins, especially with DDGS, or handling issues like dustiness with brands. You need to know your source.
Okay. And what about improving those low-quality roughages we started with, like straw? Can anything be done?
Yes, that's where treated and enriched roughages come in. A common method is treating straw with urea or ammonia. This process helps break down some of the lignocellulose bonds, making the fiber more digestible, and it also adds nitrogen, boosting the effective crude protein content.
So you're upgrading the straw itself.
Exactly. Another approach is using molasses blocks or liquid feeds. Molasses provides readily available sugars for energy, improves palatability, encouraging cows to eat more of the roughage, and these blocks are often fortified with urea, minerals, and vitamins. They are great supplements, especially for grazing animals or those on poorer quality forage. Need careful management, though, especially urea, to avoid toxicity.
So many components. How do farmers ensure cows get the right mix in every bite?
That's the ideal scenario, and it's achieved with a total mixed ration, or TMR. This involves precisely weighing and thoroughly mixing all the ingredients, the forages, grains, protein meals, byproducts, minerals, vitamins into one uniform blend.
So no picking and choosing the tasty bits.
Right. Every mouthful should theoretically be nutritionally balanced. This leads to more stable rumen fermentation, better nutrient utilization, and often higher milk production. The main requirements are having the right mixing equipment and careful management, as a TMR usually needs to be fed fresh daily.
Okay. And finally, are there any newer or more specialized feed options gaining traction? You mentioned hydroponic fodder earlier.
Yes, the specialty in novel feeds. Hydroponic fodder, often sprouted barley or maize, is definitely a big one. It's essentially young green shoots grown intensively without soil. The nutritional profile is amazing. Very high in protein, highly digestible energy, low in indigestible fiber.
Grown right on the farm.
Often, yes. Rapid production cycle, boosts intake, can replace some expensive concentrates. We'll talk more about that. Other options include things like browse trees. Certain tree leaves, like leucaena, can be very high in protein, but you sometimes have to watch for anti-nutritional factors.
Fascinating. And we can't forget the tiny ingredients that make a big difference.
Absolutely crucial, mineral and vitamin supplements. Even with a balanced mix of feeds, you often need specific supplements to fine-tune the levels of calcium, phosphorus, magnesium, salt, trace minerals like copper, zinc, selenium, and vitamins like A, D, and E. These are vital for preventing metabolic diseases, supporting immunity, reproduction. Basically, they underpin the whole system. Getting these right is non-negotiable for healthy, productive cows.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting. We've talked about the problems with poor feed like straw, and we've laid out all the components of a potentially good diet. Now let's focus on this hydroponic fodder. Why is it being seen as such a potential game changer, especially when maybe used with something like straw?
Right, the potential synergy is huge. Hydroponic fodder, let's call it NAF 4F. The naturally activated fodder sometimes is remarkable because of its nutritional density and digestibility. We're talking about sprouted grains, usually barley or maize, harvested after just a few days.
And the nutrition.
It's kind of off the charts compared to dry roughages. Crude protein can range anywhere from 25% up to even 50% on a dry matter basis. Compare that to the 2-7% we talked about in rice straw.
Wow, that's a massive difference.
Huge. And the energy density is excellent too, easily comparable to good quality silages or even some concentrate feeds. Plus, because the plant is so young, the fiber it contains is highly digestible. The lignin content is very low.
So not just more nutrients, but the cow can actually get to them much more easily.
Precisely. The dry matter digestibility of hydroponic fodder is typically very high, often around 80–85%. Remember, rice straw is down around 45%. This means the cow gets far more nutritional value out of every kilogram it eats, and cows generally find it very palatable, so they eat it readily, boosting overall intake.
Okay, high protein, high energy, super digestible. What does that actually do for milk production? What do farmers see in the tank?
They see results. Multiple studies have shown that including hydroponic fodder in dairy diets, often replacing a portion of concentrates or lower quality forage, leads to noticeable increases in milk yield. We're talking ranges like 5% to 14% more milk.
So potentially an extra liter or two per cow per day?
Easily. Sometimes more, like up to 2.5 liters extra per day. And it's not just volume. The quality often improves to higher milk fat percentages, better milk solids overall. Some studies report things like a 13% increase in 4% fat-corrected milk and similar bumps, up to 13%, in total milk fat and protein output.
That's really significant economically. But what about the cost? You need seeds? The sprouting system? Does the improved efficiency make up for that? You mentioned a slight dry matter loss during sprouting, too.
Yeah, that's a fair question. There is a small loss of dry matter, maybe 10–25%, during the sprouting process, as the seed uses some energy reserves. But the key is feed conversion efficiency, how much milk you get per unit of feed eaten. Because the hydroponic fodder is so much more digestible and nutrient-dense, the cow converts it into milk much more efficiently. This improved efficiency generally outweighs the seed costs and the small DM loss, making it economically viable, especially if it's replacing more expensive purchase feeds.
Okay, that makes sense. Beyond milk, what about the cow's health? We talked about all the issues with poor diets. Does adding hydroponic fodder help there, especially if it's mixed with some dry roughage?
Big time. The health benefits are substantial. Firstly, for rumen function. The sprouts provide readily fermentable carbohydrates, but also effective fiber. This combination helps stabilize rumen pH, reducing the risk of acidosis that you can get with high-grain diets. When you blend it with dry fodder, say 30–40% AF, it can actually shift the production of volatile fatty acids in the rumen, cores propionate, which is very beneficial for energy supply.
So it could help prevent those metabolic problems like ketosis and fatty liver we discussed earlier.
Absolutely. By improving the overall energy and protein status, particularly in early lactation, hydroponic fodder significantly mitigates the risk of those negative energy balance disorders. Plus, the sprouts themselves are rich in vitamins, enzymes, and antioxidants developed during germination. This boosts the cow's immune system. Farmers often report fewer cases of mastitis, quicker recovery times, just generally healthier animals.
And minerals. Does it help with the calcium issues from straw?
It does. Hydroponic fodder typically has a good, balanced calcium to phosphorus ratio, often around 2.1, which is ideal for absorption. This helps counteract the negative effects of high silica or oxalates in straw, reducing the risk of milk fever and related problems. It provides readily available minerals.
Okay, health benefits are clear. What about reproduction? That's always a bottom line issue for dairy farms.
Another area where it shines. That improved energy and protein supply, especially postpartum, is critical for getting cows to resume cycling quickly and conceive again. Studies have shown incorporating hydroponic fodder can lead to shorter service periods, the time from calving to conception, and tighter calving intervals, helping achieve that goal of 1 calf per cow per year.
Wow.
Yeah, and even in smaller animals, like studies with telatary goats, feeding hydroponic fodder resulted in earlier puberty, shorter kidding intervals, and higher kidding rates. It really supports reproductive efficiency across the board.
So the fodder itself is fantastic, but you keep mentioning the synergy with dry roughage. Why is mixing them potentially better than just feeding pure hydroponic fodder? Why combine it with something like straw?
That's where the strategy comes in, balancing nutrition, rumen health, and cost. It boils down to a few key things. First, cost optimization. Dry fodder, like rice straw, while nutritionally poor, is often very cheap or readily available on the farm. Hydroponic fodder requires seed and some inputs. By strategically replacing just part of that low-cost straw, say 20% to 30% of the diet's dry matter, with a high-quality hydroponic fodder.
You dramatically upgrade the whole diet's value without breaking the bank.
Exactly. You can take a ration that was maybe 4% protein from straw alone and boost it up to 12%, 15%, even 80% protein just by replacing a fraction with sprouts. You significantly lift the energy level too. You're leveraging the low cost of the straw, but overcoming its nutritional deficiencies.
Okay, that makes huge economic sense. What about the rumen health aspect of mixing?
That's the second key point, rumen health balance. While hydroponic fodder is digestible, cows still need sufficient effective fiber for proper rumen function, stimulating chewing, saliva production, maintaining the rumen mat. Rice straw, despite its flaws, provides a lot of that physical bulk, that high NDF.
So the straw provides the scratch factor, the bulk, and the sprouts provide the high-octane fuel and nutrients.
That's a great way to put it. A blend, maybe 60% straw and 40% hydroponic fodder on a dry matter basis, can give you enough effective fiber from the straw to keep the rumen environment healthy, while the sprouts deliver the readily available energy and protein needed for high production. You get the best of both worlds without compromising rumen function or digestibility.
And I guess using the straw also provides some consistency. Maybe buffers day-to-day variations in how much sprout is ready or how much the cows eat.
That's the third benefit, feed stability and buffering. Hydroponic fodder needs daily harvesting and feeding. Having the dry straw as a consistent base in the TMR helps buffer any small variations in sprout availability or intake, ensuring the cows get a more consistent diet overall. It also reduces the risk of accidentally overfeeding the highly fermentable sprouts.
So what's a typical recommendation for mixing? How much hydroponic fodder should farmers aim to include with dry roughage?
It depends on the specific situation, the quality of the straw, the production level of the cows. But a common starting point is to replace about 20% to 30% of the forage dry matter with hydroponic fodder dry matter. Then farmers can gradually increase it, maybe up to 40% or even 50%, carefully monitoring the cows, their manure consistency, and milk production to find the sweet spot for their herd. It's a flexible approach.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. What does this all really mean for you listening in? We've gone pretty deep today, haven't we? We started with the very basics, understanding dry matter, then we really unpacked the serious limitations and problems that come with relying on low-quality feeds like rice straw.
Yeah, those challenges are significant, impacting everything from intake and digestion to metabolic health, immunity, and reproduction.
But the exciting part, I think, is seeing how strategically integrating a high-quality, highly digestible feed, like hydroponic fodder, especially in combination with that conventional dry roughage, can genuinely turn things around.
It really is a powerful synergy. You're not just seeing a bump in milk yield or better milk quality, although that's huge. You're also looking at potentially dramatic improvements in overall animal health, reducing costly diseases, and boosting reproductive efficiency. It addresses both the economic pressures and, arguably, the sustainability aspects for farmers by making better use of resources they might already have.
Exactly. It's about upgrading what you've got. And this whole example, optimizing something as fundamental as animal feed, it kind of reflects a wider principle, doesn't it? How looking closely at a system, understanding the components, and applying innovation can transform something low value into a high-performance solution.
That's a great point.
So maybe a final thought for you to ponder. What other areas, maybe in your work, maybe in your life, could benefit from that same kind of deep dive approach? Where might you unlock some hidden potential by really understanding the components and looking for those synergistic solutions?
Hope you enjoyed this episode of Got Milk, the Indian Dairy Context. Subscribe to the podcast. And a reminder, this episode was brought to you by Shunya Agritech, India's first animal nutrition and well-being focused organization. Thank you, and see you in the next episode.